everyone, and welcome back to Jola Speaks. Thank you for joining me once again today. Today is a wonderful day. We have been learning from Dr. Adeyinka Adewale in the Jola Speaks interview series that we've been on for the last couple of days. And this week, we're going to continue that learning, and we're going to learn a number of topics this week. But today, we start with the word consistency with God. And we learn about why it is so important in growing with God. Yinka shares his own experience. So I'll say, join me and watch and learn from Yinka's wonderful pearls of wisdom today. So I would come back when the interview for today finishes. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to a topic on consistency. I mean, Jola Speaks, people have always asked me, why am I so consistent? And I always laugh and explain, but then I think it's very important to take a step back and understand why consistency with God is so important. And in your last question, you also kind of touched on that a bit, but in your own experience, we used to hear from your view, why do you believe consistency is so important, in growing with God? And not even God, but even in life generally, why is consistency so important, very important itself? Yeah.
Great question. I learned the power of consistency from an early age in a separate context. How did I learn consistency? It was my father. My father taught me the power of consistency when he began to say to me that you will never be good at what you don't do often. You will never be good at what you don't do often. And so he then put it to test. So every week, my father will give me sessions of maths and English and of essay writing every single week for the longest of time I can remember. Like, he would walk me through every chapter of my maths book, every chapter of and he wasn't home, but his presence loomed large in the house. He walked in another city. I lived in another city. But his presence loomed large around me. Like, I knew every Saturday every weekend was the accountability weekend for me. The moment he is back, he will call me. We will bring the work and we will look at it together. And when I began to read the Bible for myself, and I began to hear of, there was a man who was the owner of a city. He said he was going to go and claim a kingdom in the book of Luke. And then he called his 10 servants and handed them 10 minas and said, do business till I come.
Yes.
And the Bible said he went, when he returned, he called them to account for it. And then he was asking them, what did you do with what I gave to you? I had seen that system of accountability a while back. And so consistency became, for me, not just something that again, going back to our logic of principle, power, and practice.
Yes.
And the way I began to see consistency was, number one, you can never be good at what you don't do often. And number two, you don't grow by being transplanted often. Anything that must grow must remain in the soil and abide. So Jesus said, abide in me and I in you. And then you can pray, because we will be one. You will never ask amiss. So whatever you ask, because you are already in tune with me. And so you will ask right, because you are thinking like me, you are seeing like me. But those things come from abiding. What does it mean to abide? Stay in one place. Consistency. Remain there. So consistency, and this is the age of mass marketed distractions. So consistency is not something that comes naturally to a generation that wants things fast. They want it fast and quick, but not slow and steady. But at times, for you to get results, the place of consistency is key. It powers you to maintain. Now, Joshua.
Yes.
I've always used Joshua to teach success. Because Joshua 1:8 says that this book of law shall not depart from your mouth, for then you shall meditate day and night to observe to do all that is written in it, and then thou shalt make your way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success.
Yes.
There's a value chain to success that God gave to Joshua. If you go back and read it, he said, you would observe everything written in this word. He said, do not turn to it from the right or to the left. So that is Consistency. And he said, only be strong, be of good courage. Every time God spoke to Joshua chapter 11, there was a vast army that came up against him. And the Bible said that they said when they combined their armies, they were like as vast as the seashore. And the first word God said to Joshua was, do not be afraid. I always say to people, do you know what that means? God is saying to Joshua, the same thing I've told you from the beginning that will power your ministry and life is have courage. He said, only be strong and be of good courage. Only be strong. Only be strong. So this tells us that at times the power of consistency is also in the quality of focus on the thing that you're supposed to focus on. So consistency is not just I'm dissipating my energy on many things. I'm focused on the right thing. So God told Joshua, only be strong and be of good courage. That the only key you need is that you understand my word, you do everything in my word, and you are strong and courageous. Those are the two things. If you can have this thing, your life is because Joshua's ministry and calling was conquest based. Moses was a diplomatic leader. Joshua was a military leader. Now Moses, my servant, is dead. The end of diplomacy is over. This is the end of diplomacy. It's now the time for conquest. Here comes the promised land. You're going to go in there. No promised land is unoccupied.
No promised land is unoccupied.
Yes, ma'am.
To hold that.
Every promised land is already occupied. Something occupies it. Whether there's a principality or whether there are people there. So when you go there, you have to go with the mandate of the king to go and lay your foot on the ground. So God knew that Joshua would have to fight. And contend. And so as he was going there, God was saying to him, if you will win against all of these guys, consistency is key.
It's key.
You've got to be consistent and be consistent in principle, consistent in message, consistent in action. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night. Consistency.
Day and night.
To observe to do all that is written in it. Consistency. So there is consistency of time. There is consistency of action. There is consistency of principle. Only be strong and be of good courage. That's your principle, sir. Nothing more. So God was telling Joshua, the key to your victorious life is consistency.
Simple.
Just be consistent in the right thing. And for someone listening to me right now, I say to business people, what is one thing that you're good at? You're telling me you're a small business, you make food. What's your signature? I understand that you can be good with many things or many pastry, but people just have to know you for something or at least a few things you are good at. But you don't develop signature dishes by spasmodic effort. Signature dishes are developed with effort and consistency, because you refine, you fine-tune, you refine, define before you arrive
at the exactly.
So recipes are not one take shot. You've got to continue to do it until you get at it. So even for business owners, the power of consistency is so important. So you don't grow by transplanting yourself often. So you go to people's spiritual lives. I respect people going to people saying they have multiple churches. I'm like, where are you planted? Because where you're planted determines what you get. The food you get, the quality of food that comes to you, consistency. Where are you abiding?
You can't be going up and down.
You can't be transplanting yourself and expect to grow.
That's so true.
I always say to people, I've tried this thing before. And I challenge our listeners to try it. Buy a plant. Be transplanting it every day.
See it to grow.
See whether it will grow.
The
only way it will grow is if it remains.
That's so true.
Consistency.
It's so important.
If it doesn't remain, it will die.
Okay, so in terms of recap, what do we learn from this interview on consistency? And I like a number of statements that Yinka made that actually for me are pearls of wisdom. One, he said, you will never be good at what you do not do often. You will never be good at what you do not do often. And when I think through my own personal life, what I've grown to do so well are things that I've done over and over and over and over again, to the point whereby I can do them in my sleep. And it goes on to everybody. Once you do things, no matter how hard something is, if you consistently do it, you will definitely realize that it comes easier. And so the more you do something, the easier it gets for you, and you get good and better at it every time. And I also like a statement he made where he said, you do not grow by being transplanted. A lot of times we have different churches that one may go to for different reasons. But looking at his example, it's very obvious to say that when you want to grow, right, it's best for you to grow in a place and let God lead and guide you. You won't expect that God is leading you to do to too many churches to transplant you. So if you think about it that way, perhaps you need to think of, Lord, what church, what area are you positioning me to? What church, where should I be going to? Where should I grow? And as God leads to that place, you will definitely grow in the aspect that he has called you, to grow. And the last thing I must say is, we need to abide in God. Do not turn to the left or the right. And it's so important to remember, we are abiding in God. We are consistent. We are there. The same way, Yinka described even Joshua in the Bible, right? He was there. He was abiding, right? When you continue to abide in God, he would abide in you. Be consistent in prayer. Don't move left, move right. Don't go with the wind, because a lot of times those winds can be distractions, and before you know it, you've gone, right? Last week we discussed the drift. You don't know that you're just drifting if you don't realize that you're not anchored. So the more you abide and stay there, the constant you become, and also the closer you actually get, with God. Remember, there's consistency in time, action, and principles. Consistency in time with God, action, what you are doing and obeying him, and principles and what you are obeying. It's very important to remember those that particular point that he mentioned. So I will stop here today and just encourage us. I know we discussed consistency in devotion last week, but this is consistency with God. Why it is so important. We need to constantly remember, if you want to grow in God, if you want to grow anywhere, you need to be consistent in doing it. And as he said initially, like he mentioned, you will never be good at something that you don't do often. So whatever it is that you want to be consistent in, do it often. Just keep, no matter how mundane it sounds and seems, just keep doing it, because the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you clearly begin to do it much more better than most people, because you've done it so many times. So thank you for listening to me today, and God bless you. And remember, be consistent. I love you, and God loves you a whole lot more. Bye.